We need to talk about the black, sticky elephant in the room, Jägermeister. You know exactly what it smells like. You know exactly how much regret is bottled inside that green glass. Right now it is sitting in a specialized glowing refrigeration unit on the counter of a questionable dive bar near you. It is the official sponsor of questionable tattoos, extremely loud music, and waking up with your shoes still on. The official corporate marketing wants you to believe it is a majestic, ancient elixir. They want you to picture elite, stoic outdoorsmen sipping it from crystal glasses after a long day of conquering the Alps. The truth is significantly more pathetic. It is essentially an industrial cough syrup. It was invented by a bored guy who sold vinegar for a living and really just wanted an excuse to get drunk in the freezing mud without his beverage turning into an ice cube. And if you haven't put it together, I'll do it for you. Millions of people are willingly taking shots of modified salad dressing. Our tragedy begins in the town of Wolfenbüttel, Germany. The year was 1878. A man named Wilhelm Mast had a vision. He wanted to manufacture vinegar, and he did. He opened a vinegar factory and supplied the local region with sour water, because nothing screams massive financial success like industrial quantities of sour water. Decades pass. Wilhelm's son, Kurt Mast, eventually inherited the family business. Kurt looked around at the vats of acidic liquid and decided he hated it. He wanted out. And who among us hasn't inherited a regional vinegar monopoly and immediately decided to abandon it to make liquor in the woods? Kurt had two actual passions in life. He liked hunting animals and he liked drinking alcohol, but there was a logistical problem. Germany gets incredibly cold in the winter. If you take a regular beer or a nice wine into the woods in January, it freezes, or at the very least it fails to keep you warm. Kurt needed something aggressive. He needed a high-proof spirit that could survive sub-zero temperatures and completely numb his face while he held a rifle. So the vinegar heir pivoted to amateur botany. He spent years throwing random plants into vats of alcohol. He wasn't looking for a delicate balance. He was looking for maximum sensory overload to cover up the taste of cheap grain spirit. He eventually settled on a recipe containing 56 different ingredients. 56. When you put 56 different herbs, blossoms, roots, and fruits into a single liquid, you are no longer cooking. You are just sweeping a forest floor into a bucket. The ingredients supposedly include citrus peel, licorice, star anise, poppy seeds, saffron, ginger, and juniper berries. I say supposedly because the exact formula is a closely guarded corporate secret. Of course it is. Every beverage company figures out that claiming to have a secret recipe is free marketing. You just lock a piece of paper in a vault and suddenly everyone thinks you are Willy Wonka. Kurt finalized his messy swamp water in 1934. It was thick. It was dark brown. It tasted like an angry pine tree. He took a batch, froze it for a year, thawed it out, and realized it tasted exactly the same as the day he made it. Which makes sense, because when something tastes exclusively like black licorice and dirt, freezing it does not really alter the profile. He bottled his creation at 35% alcohol by volume. It was strong enough to keep a guy warm in the snow, but weak enough that he could still theoretically aim a gun. Now he needed to sell it. He needed a brand. Since he was a hunter, he went with the most painfully literal name possible, Jägermeister. That translates directly to Master Hunter, a subtle, nuanced name for a subtle, nuanced beverage. For the logo, he didn't even bother hiring an artist to invent something new. He just blatantly shoplifted a medieval Catholic legend. He used the image of a majestic stag with a glowing Christian cross hovering right between its antlers. This is the exact symbol of Saint Hubertus. Hubertus was a guy from the 7th century who skipped church on Good Friday to go hunting. God supposedly sent him a glowing deer to tell him his priorities were completely out of order. Hubertus quit hunting and became a saint. Kurt Mast looked at this sacred, centuries-old narrative of spiritual redemption and decided it would look absolutely fantastic on his sticky bottles of hunting juice. But there is a glaring, historical elephant in the room regarding the launch of Jägermeister. Let us look at the timeline. Jägermeister officially hit the shelves in 1935, exactly 1 year prior in 1934, and a high-ranking official in the newly formed German government named Hermann Göring was given a very specific title. He was named the Reichsjägermeister, the imperial master of the hunt. The timing is extremely convenient. For decades, the German public casually referred to the drink as Göring Schnapps. The modern corporate entity behind Jägermeister fiercely denies any intentional connection. They insist Jägermeister was just a generic term for a gamekeeper. Wait, let me get this straight. You launch a hunting-themed alcohol called Master Hunter literally months after the second most powerful man in a terrifying political regime loudly declares himself the imperial master of the hunt, And you expect us to believe that is a total coincidence? That is right. Not even the company can get their own legend straight. Sure, let us go with coincidence. Anyway, for its first few decades, Jägermeister was not a party drink. It was strictly marketed as a medicinal digestive. You drank it after a heavy meal of pork and cabbage to settle your stomach. It was essentially an herbal Pepto-Bismol for German grandfathers. It sat quietly on shelves, bothering nobody, tasting like medicinal bark. Then the 1970s happened. A man named Sidney Frank entered the chat. Sidney Frank was an American liquor importer. He was a ruthless, brilliant businessman who actively searched for bizarre, cheap foreign products that he could buy for pennies and sell to Americans for dollars. He found Jägermeister. He tasted this thick, bitter, grandfatherly stomach tonic and made a terrifying logical leap. He decided this was exactly what American college students needed to be drinking. Frank brought Jägermeister to the United States. Sales were terrible, obviously, because 21-year-olds in California do not naturally crave an obscure European cough syrup named after forest rangers. Frank realized that to sell a terrible tasting product, he had to completely distract the consumer from the taste. He had to turn it into a spectacle. He threw out the entire European marketing playbook. He decided to market it as a dangerous, mystical party potion. He hired armies of attractive young women, dressed them in extremely small outfits bearing the Jägermeister logo, and unleashed them upon college bars across America. He called them the Jägerettes. This was a game-changing innovation that everyone claimed they invented. The Jägerettes did not pour standard shots. Frank made them hand out free samples of Jägermeister in glass test tubes. He literally packaged his liquor to look like a volatile chemical experiment. It worked flawlessly. Frat boys loved it. Frank also benefited from a completely fabricated rumor that Jägermeister contained actual deer blood. He did not officially start the rumor, but he absolutely refused to correct it. He led an entire generation of American teenagers believe they were getting aggressively drunk on the blood of a magical German stag. He also realized the drink was marginally less offensive when it was freezing cold, so he invented the Jägermeister tap machine. He convinced bars to install these massive, glowing green refrigeration units right on the counter. The machine dispensed the liquid at temperatures just above freezing. This was a two-part strategy. First, the extreme cold numbed your tongue so you could not taste the 56 weeds. Second, it acted as a giant, unavoidable illuminated billboard. Sidney Frank took a geriatric digestive aid and single-handedly transformed it into the unofficial sponsor of bad decisions. But the true mutation of Jägermeister arrived in the late 1990s. The specific inventor of this atrocity remains anonymous, which is lucky for them, because they would likely be put on trial. Someone realized that doing a freezing shot of herbal syrup was not intense enough. They needed to combine it with the newly invented category of synthetic Austrian energy drinks. The Jägerbomb was born. The ritual is psychotic. You take a glass of a violently sweet, caffeine-loaded energy drink. Then you drop an entire heavy shot glass filled with Jägermeister directly into it. You do not pour it. You drop the glass, then you chug the splashing, sticky mess. Physiologically, it is a nightmare. The alcohol is a heavy depressant. The massive dose of caffeine and taurine is a stimulant. Your body is simultaneously being told to pass out and sprint through a brick wall. It creates a state of wide-awake, highly confident inebriation. The Jägerbomb made Jägermeister an unstoppable global force. It became the mandatory uniform of the 2000s club scene. Eventually, the company had to distance itself from the Jägerbomb. Health regulators started noticing that combining 56 mystery weeds with industrial stimulants was causing people's hearts to vibrate at unnatural frequencies. The modern Jägermeister company is actually trying to rebrand right now. They run fancy advertisements trying to convince people that Jägermeister is a premium complex Amaro. They want high-end mixologists to use it in craft cocktails with artisanal ice cubes and burnt orange peels. It is honestly adorable. You cannot spend 40 years paying college students to funnel your product out of test tubes and then suddenly demand to be respected like a vintage scotch. You made your sticky licorice-scented bed, and now you have to lie in it. Today, Jägermeister moves tens of millions of bottles every single year. It is still packaged in the exact same brutalist, squared-off green glass bottle. Kurt Mass specifically designed that bottle in the 30s to survive being dropped on an oak floor because somehow He knew exactly who would be drinking his product a century later. It is a drink born from the boredom of a vinegar salesman. It is branded with stolen religious art. It was artificially forced into popularity by an American marketing guy who just kept throwing pretty girls and free alcohol at a demographic until they surrendered. It proves that you do not need to invent something good. You just need to invent something weird, freeze it until it loses all flavor, and convince young people that drinking it makes them immortal. That's all there is to it. Go ahead and confess everything in the comments below. Anyway, please donate a subscribe to fund the next video.